Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. You join me today for day 41 of the UK lockdown, where currently I'm out and about taking my daily exercise first thing in the morning to try and avoid the crowds, and I'm bringing you guys along for the ride as always. Now today, folks, I've returned back to the countryside, with it being weekend and it being Sunday especially, and it being a gorgeous sunny Sunday. I mean, I've had to dispense with the old hot pot hat this morning. I've had to leave that one back in the old jalopy as it's a little bit warm. It is a little bit warm. But I've come out to the countryside to mainly keep the wheels turning on the old jalopy. I'm sure many people will agree with me that vehicles don't like being stood idle. Anybody who's been on holiday for a fortnight will know that when they return home, the old jalopy seems to groan and bang a little bit and doesn't like being moved. Now, I think many people who've not been running the vehicles over these past 5 to 6 weeks, they're going to hit a few problems come Monday morning, especially if they're returning back to work. So I suggest, depending when this vlog uploads and you watch this, you get out there and you turn your engine over in preparation for Monday morning. If indeed you're going back to work on Monday morning. With a bit of luck, you are doing. So folks, day 41. And as I say, I'm back out in the countryside, and a little bit of an update for anybody out there who's wondering when I'm going to finally capture that deer on camera. Gary Canning, I know that you are desperate to see this deer. And I came, mate, this close to it this morning, believe it or not, because as I was driving here, I have to pass the area that I normally go to on foot, you know, when I leave the old jalopy at home. And what would be on the grass verge just at the side of the road, about as close as I am to these trees away here, that bloody deer. It's walking alongside, you know, minding its own business. So I'm quickly trying to get the camera and switch it on, you know, on the passenger seat, whilst trying to drive the old jalopy. And by the time it had switched it on and I got myself into a decent camera shot, it had made its way into the woods and disappeared once again. So I will try and get that for you before I wrap this series of videos up, which hopefully will be next week. I'm hoping Boris Johnson unveils his plan and he does give us, finally, some clarification on when this period is going to end. If it does turn out that it's just another open-ended period of lockdown where there's no end in sight, basically, you know, there's no end date, then I'm not going to move forward into that. I did state that, you know, in a previous vlog, and I'm going to stick to that, I think. Because I've been doing this now for about 40 or so days, getting up first thing in the morning, coming out, doing a vlog, taking it home, editing it for your edification, uploading it, and it does all take time. So if we do end up in another period of lockdown, then I want to enjoy that with Mrs H and little Toby James, and probably get a few jobs around the house done, because if we end up with something silly like 12 weeks of lockdown and Mr H hasn't even done a tap, I'm never going to hear the last of it, am I? Anyway folks, enough of that. On to today's vlog. Now, it seems that the old face mask debate is raging and raging. It'll just carry on and on that, because it does seem it is a big red line and a big line in the sand for many of you. That is where you will say, no, enough's enough. Now, one or two people have contacted me afterwards and said, what about this? What about that? And one of my regular commentators, Steve Smith, hello to you, sir, hope you're doing well. He mentioned, what about people with facial hair? Where do they go if you have to wear a mask, because it won't fit properly around your face, you know? So that's another question. I've no doubt that the experts haven't thought about these things, especially if they don't have a beard themselves, and they'll just be throwing these ideas out there. We'll just have to wait and see what gets unveiled next week. Now, one of the ideas that's being put forward by experts to try and get a snapshot of the country as a whole, where we're at with this coronavirus, is to send out random kits to people's addresses. They're going to send out about 100,000 of these to people's addresses across England, and the idea is that they'll invite you to take a swab from your nose and your throat and send them back, and from that they'll be able to determine where the coronavirus is in different parts of the country. And it raises some interesting questions, really. From the way I've read it, it looks like they're going to do it a bit like how they choose people for jury service, you know, where they go off the electoral register. That's how it reads. And just digressing for a moment, I don't know about you hot potters, but jury service is something I have never fancied doing. I've never wanted to do it. It always looks too much hassle, to be honest, having to take time off work and things like that. But if you have indeed done jury service and you found it a positive experience, please leave your comments below. You know, I'd be interested to hear how it all works. But I've personally never done that, and it's not something I fancy doing. But I think that's how they're going to send these kits out, from the reading of it. I may be wrong. Maybe people have already expressed the willingness to volunteer in any capacity that they can, and they'll write to them. Because when all's said and done, if you're just going to randomly send these kits through people's doors, you're running the risk of, A, the building being occupied, you know, because you're going off old information, and B, the people actually responding. Because as anybody who'll know out there who's ever dealt with anything with DNA, there's lots of laws surrounding DNA. You can't just go around taking people's DNA and storing it on records and things like that. It's a big no-no. So it is interesting that if you respond to this, have you sort of signed away your rights by responding to it? You know, a bit like when you take out a package deal with a television company or something like that. You don't formally sign something, do you? But by taking it out, you agree to the terms and conditions, and maybe this will be the same way. And do you have concerns about your DNA being gathered and then stored? What will happen to it and things like that? Be interesting to find out your thoughts about it. You know, I don't know where I am on the fence with it. Part of me wants to respond because, you know, you're supposedly helping people out, aren't you? You're going to help the situation out. But I do have those privacy concerns, so be interesting to find out what other people think about that. Another thing that they've come up with is they're going to use the islanders, aren't they? The people who live on the Outer Hebrides and places like that. They're going to perhaps lift the lockdown for them first and see what happens. You know, will it come back with a vengeance or not? And I don't think they're going to get a true picture doing that, because these little communities that are in back and beyond and on islands and things like that, let's be honest with it, they're their own little household, aren't they, so to speak. They're not mixing with people from the wider community or the mainland. I did say at the beginning of all this, if you remember, on the very first day, that people who was living on moorlands and things like that were less likely to catch coronavirus than people living in big cities and things like that. So I don't think using them is going to give them a true picture somehow. But that's just my thoughts on it. I don't think the islanders are too happy as well at being used as guinea pigs, to be honest. Many of them will say that they'll just continue with the lockdown along with the rest of the country, so that'll balls up the little data sheets and that, won't it? Anyway, folks, we're slowly but surely winding up to the old 10-minute mark. Now, as I said, I am looking to wind this up as of next week, really. I'm hoping to bring a close to this series of videos. I have had a good run. I've enjoyed speaking to you guys, you know, through the comment section. And if I've not been able to get round to you, you know, I've not answered you, that's not been anything personal. It's just been basically a time-taking exercise. You know, it does take a lot of time, and I've just not been able to get round to you. But a big thank you to everybody who's commented and contributed to this series of videos. They've been unexpectedly more popular than I thought they would have been, but it's good to see that people have enjoyed them nonetheless, and it's helped you get through the lockdown. Now, before I do go, one or two of you have also mentioned regarding, you know, when I mentioned the merchandise and things like that, one or two of you have pointed me in directions where I could get t-shirts sort of made to order, rather than going ordering 50 of them and sitting on them and hoping that somebody orders one. I can use a website that will then produce it for me, and people go on it, and as they order it, I get a kickback. Big thank you to that. A fellow by the name of Lee pointed me in that direction. It is something that I may look at some point in the future, but as I said, as yet, I've just got no plans to do it. I have seen other YouTubers in the past create merchandise with the best of intentions, and then they've got stuck with it. You know, they've been lumbered with it, and they've either ended up giving it away or just getting rid of it, basically, because it's been under their feet, and I don't want that to happen to me, basically. So, folks, we're now coming up to the 10-minute mark. I'm going to close this video here. Big thank you to everybody who's been watching this series of videos and that. As I said, I am looking to wind this up as of next week. So, folks, until tomorrow, when it'll be day 42 of the UK lockdown, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell. Stay safe as always, and until the next time, bye-bye for now. I'm just going to close now with this lovely scenery.